Hello my friends, after Russia understood that our forces crossed the Dnieper river near to Kherson and Antonovka, they've started to use the aviation bombs on the Ukrainian positions in that area. However, we cannot use them as the start of the counteroffensive. Basically, it's the hard terrain for that. However, we may create some sort of the camp in this area, collect the supplies and then strike Russians on their controlled territory. We have enough boats provided to Ukraine by our allies, around 50 landing boats, so we may use them for that, some sort of the assault operation. And further, we may create some sort of the camp on this territory. Well, it's the good scenario, but it's not going to happen in a nearby perspective. Because simply, as I say to you, Russia started to use the gliding bombs and they launched them from the long distance, around 40 kilometers of range, to minimize the risks for their airplanes. So it's the second strike of the FAB-500 aviation bomb that was recorded recently. I guess the only way to counter-react to that situation from the Ukrainian army is to put the Patriot systems closer to the front lines. Or we may use aviation, but in our case the aviation of Ukrainian Air Force is just very old, so we are unable to use the long-range missiles to target Russian airplanes over their territory, and also our radars on MiG-29s are not that effective compared to the Russian radars on their modern jets. So the shelling is mostly happening on those islands and the Russians do not touch this territory so far. By the way, about the Patriot systems, we got the report from the Ukrainian Air Force commander that those systems were deployed in Ukraine, but we are unaware of their locations, obviously. But in general, I give like 90% that those systems will be used for the future counteroffensive because they may eliminate the threat for Ukrainian army coming from the Russian aviation. As you can see, they continue to use the aviation all across the Ukrainian front lines, especially on the south and on the eastern part of Ukraine. By the way, let's go to the recent update. We have the situation change in Bakhmutivka. Bakhmutivka location is over here and Russians moved just a little bit forward over here and it's very close to Avdiivka. Well, they've took the part of the railroad over here, but still they're unable to move towards Avdiivka in this area. The situation for them is standstill for a long time and Ukrainian forces continue to resist in this town. Plus, there was the report that Russia fired their artillery near to Hulai Pole, and there's the residential area, the private sector, near to Marfopil. So it was recorded by Ukrainian drones. As you can see, just small buildings over there, and there was no movement from the Russian side. We thought that it was the preparation for the possible attack of the Russian forces, but no, it was just the artillery fire. And as you can see, this village is very small to hide the armored vehicles, and also it's very dangerous to store them very close to the front lines. But yes, there are Ukrainian soldiers with light armored vehicles. Alright, let's go back to Kherson area because we have also the good news. Not just the Russian army bombs the positions in that area, but also Ukrainian army eliminated the Russian forces further away from the river near to Pidlisna village. And there was the video. I will publish it on my Telegram channel. So my friends, don't forget to check it in the video description just below. I use it as my alternate resource, so if something goes wrong with my YouTube channel, you may always find me on Telegram. So this is the area. By the way, my friends, you may also find the link for the Deep State map resource. This map is the best, I think, out there, and I use it constantly in my videos. And you may also support the team of the Deep State. They do a fantastic job analyzing the situation. And there is the Russian armored vehicle out there, and Russians tried to hide it in the trees, but Ukraine used the artillery fire in that area. And there's the confirmation that the Russian armored vehicle was just destroyed. And speaking about the recent advancement of the Russian forces, they were forced actually to retreat a little because Ukrainian army fired artillery to their positions, and we have also the video about it. Unfortunately, I cannot post it on YouTube, but there is the road over here and Russians were just running away, hiding from the artillery fire, and they got some losses. The situation near to Marinka, it's the south from Avdiivka, and Russia tries to take this small town for many months, for more than half a year already, and recently they were able to take this hump over here, but they are now constantly under the artillery fire, and we also have the video and photo confirmation of that. As you can see, the town was totally demolished. But Ukrainian army had built so strong defense lines that Russia is unable to penetrate them. They've took half of the town over here, but unable to move forward. And this is the Bakhmut today. As you can see, there are lots of the fire from both of the sides in that city. And speaking about Bakhmut, there were no big changes for today. Actually, no changes for today were registered. The Ukrainian army continued to stay in defense, but we have some sort of the interesting video about this area. So Ukrainian aviation used the GDAM bombs over there, the gliding bombs provided to Ukrainian army by Americans. So in a way they're taking the ground, but immediately got demolished by our bombs. And I counted like 3 big booms over there, totally demolishing the 3 residential buildings. Obviously there are no civilians any longer, just look at those buildings totally demolished. So it's the only shelter for our enemy. And there was the video published as well, how Russians tried to get to Ukrainian positions on those islands in Kherson region. They took the boat and they went under the fire of the Ukrainian army, and one of the Russians just went into the water, and probably he is still over there. Right, we have some more news from the Bakhmut area. Sorry my friends, we have to jump from one point to another on the map because I watched the news according to the time, not according to the map location, so sorry about it. So near to Bogdanovka, Russians tried to perform the assault, overtaking the Khromove from this direction. So firstly they advanced towards Bogdanovka and totally unsuccessful. The Ukrainian army was ready for that advancement that happened from this place, and we were using the artillery systems to target the Russian tanks. Again, I cannot show you the full video, but there was the Russian tank that went under the artillery fire and was totally demolished over there together with part of the crew. And the assault of the Russian army stopped immediately. And there is some fighting video in Bakhmut that I published on my Telegram channel. As you can see, the soil there is completely wet, and the forecast unfortunately is not good for this week. One cyclone with the rain has just passed the Ukrainian territory, but the new one is coming from the Scandinavia and from the European countries just to Ukraine. So there's gonna be rainy again. It's very unusual weather this year, my friends. It's very wet. Usually at the late April we have pretty much the stable weather, but I'm sure that during the May it will stabilize. And the weather now is the crucial factor for the Ukrainian counterattack. There was the report today that Russia have started the evacuation of the loyal officials from the town, which is very close to the nuclear power station. As a proof, we have the dialogue in a messenger between the officials and the local citizen, and they cannot provide the buses to that citizen because they are fully booked by other people. So evacuacja means evacuation, but officials just call it the special buses with the special routes. The United States deploys more cyber forces abroad to help to fight hackers, and they also help Ukraine to do it. I think that also happened because of the Ukrainian corruption scandal. One of the officials who was responsible for this internal surveillance and cybersecurity of Ukraine today was searched by the anti-corruption forces of Ukraine. His name is Yuri Shigol, and he is now accused of taking the part of the international funds for the cyber defense. Plus, he took the part of the funds from the national state budget. As you can see that during the wartime there is the corruption still in Ukraine, and for many it's like a black hole. Then Ukraine got billions of dollars, and some officials are trying to get their hands on that. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau was organized in Ukraine with the help of the American officials. And it's the only power, let's say, that may fight the corruption in Ukraine, because it's not being interfered by the president, by our government, parliament, or whatever. The Ukrainian government wanted to get rid of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau for many years by changing the director of that unit to their own puppet one. But they were unsuccessful with that, so National Anti-Corruption Bureau performs its tasks okay. But it's kind of the small organization and it's unable to handle the big Ukrainian corruption, the government corruption. Understand me right, there are good people in Ukrainian government, even in Ukrainian parliament, and I do support our President Zelensky, but still the corruption in Ukraine is astonishing. And that's why American officials send just their guys to take care about the cybersecurity, because they see that the funds are not going to the proper way. The highest fear that I have as Ukrainian is not fear of Russia or whatever. We just hate them. We just sad about this total situation and we are angry about Russia. But the fear I have that my country will not change after the war is over. There is the big chance that corruption will stay the same, and all of those officials were responsible also for the failed defense at the beginning of this war. Then Russian forces entered the south of Ukraine freely. So who is responsible for that? Why all of those roads were demined? So we still don't know. And now our soldiers have to pay their own lives to return the territory and the people back to Ukraine. So after all of that, if we will not be able to handle the Ukrainian corrupt government, to change it for better, to make reforms, my friends, it will be the big failure for Ukraine. And those people who left Ukraine as the refugees mostly will not come back because they will not see the future for their kids in Ukraine. About the war itself, I'm sure that we're gonna win it, but about corruption, I'm not sure. Alright, the news about the Abrams tanks that I don't really like. It appeared that those tanks that were delivered by United States to Germany are not for Ukrainian army, but just for the training purposes of the Ukrainian soldiers. We got this information from the Pentagon Speaker General Patrick Ryder. So our guys are going to the Germany on a training this week, and I thought that in 8 weeks we're gonna receive those tanks with our soldiers. But General Patrick says that we're gonna receive the better version of the tank, but a little later. He says this year. So it appeared that the previous delivery schedule was correct. We're gonna receive them in September or October. Great news, the Ukraine was able to evacuate its citizens from Sudan, and not only, there are also some other nationalities, citizens of Georgia and Peru. All of the SkyUp Airlines employees were taken from Khartoum. Unfortunately, one of the Ukrainians' Boeing 737 was totally lost out there because of the fighting, and still there is one more Boeing 737 of SkyUp Airlines is located in Khartoum. For now, we may say that the airline is unable to take that airplane out, so they lost 2 of the airplanes. And here is the satellite image of the trenches that Russians were able to build near to the Dnieper River on the south part. So there are some vulnerable areas for them, as they think, and they dig down into the ground, created the defense lines. The British intelligence says that Russian losses decreased by 30%, but also the advancement of the Russian forces decreased this month, so that is why. So Russian losses highly likely are reduced after their failed attempt of the winter offensive. The only achievement that they had during the winter time is the Solidar town, that's it. My friends, I'm gonna keep you updated on situation in Ukraine. Now please press the like to this video, and if you want to support my job, there are some links in the video description just below. You may also support me on Patreon or on the sponsorship on this YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your help. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.